Before I go on to introductions, if you would indulge me, I'd like to do a bit of a survey, um, an exercise in self-identification maybe. Would you kindly raise your hands if you're an archivist or a librarian? Okay. Thank you. Artists? Um, Researchers in general? Okay. I don't know what the rest of you are, but I'm glad you're interested and that you come today. Maybe we can discover. Oh, are there arts management students? Yeah, okay. I have them all on my right. Okay, thank you for that. The reason I'm asking is I'd really like to have this session become as interactive as we can make it. So it's supposed to be a round table, but we're not in a round table. As my fellow panelists were saying. So please use your imagination. We will try to be as informal and as engaged as we can with you. And in the interest of getting you engaged, I'd like to say that part of my moderator duties is keeping everyone on time. So I hope I don't lose any friends while doing that. That means I'll give each of you the main ones 20 minutes each. I will give Clara 10 minutes. Please don't ignore me if I'm trying to get your attention. Basically, this is so that we'll have enough time left towards the end for a really vigorous discussion. All right. On to introductions. First of all, perhaps we might talk about why we thought of archiving as one of the sessions for the educational activities of the Delena retrospective. And I hope you are aware that this is one of the activities we've lined up for that exhibition that is going on the 3rd and 4th floors, which we hope you'll still have time to go to afterward. First of all, as an art historian, I would say the archive is one of the most valuable and primary sources of knowledge and information. It's also a building block for exhibition histories, histories of artistic practice, and for those of you who are artists in the audience, as you will probably attest yourselves, archiving as artistic practice has gained quite some headway over these recent years. So we're hoping to engage you on these various levels and perhaps even further by telling you a bit about what was happening behind the building up of the Delena retrospective. And in the interest of doing that, I would like to introduce the first speaker, who is my co-curator and who is the artistic director of Back to Square One, Clara Ramirez, who, of course, was intrinsically, I mean, very, very involved in putting together this mammoth of an exhibition, which the scale of which grew in no small part because of the efficiency of our research team, who will be speaking to you later on. So Claro is also an independent curator who has been involved in traveling exhibitions such as Riverscapes in Flux, which was put up by the Goethe Institute. He was one of the curators of the Singapore Biennale 2013, and has been involved in various projects with institutions such as the Cultural Center of the Philippines, Japan Foundation, Goethe and Lopez Museum. Yeah, I'll keep it short and hand over to you. I'm sorry, just before I do that. He will be speaking about the backstory of Last Full Show.
Any questions? 10 minutes lang daw ako. Anyways, magandang hapon. Maybe I'll start with this. A equation of a 4 plus 3 equals 1. Does it make sense, right? 4 plus 3 equals 1. Buti na lang artist tayo dahil hindi tayo mahilig sa math. Imagine nyo na lang kung bakit 4 plus 3 equals 1. And then I'll go through that in the latter part. The exhibition last week's show was approached under the philosophy that runs under the back to square. The square, we are not square, but we are redefining the box people call square. And the square has 4 areas. Let me share to you the 4 areas. The 4 areas that hopes to draw out the primary source, which is integral, of course, and crucial, vital to archiving and exhibition curating. Number 1 area would have been the artist, of course, artist area. His art, how he sees things and how he translates his ideas and images in a given surface or a given area. Like if you visited the exhibition already on the 3rd floor, it was introduced with the collection of the CCP, which is Comedia, Pakil, starts from Pakil, because that is his hometown. And on the other side, opposite side, you have the series of the exercise series and the Fall of Bataan. Juxtaposed together, you can see that it was done in the 90s, and you can see the image and how the artist was moving his ideas and imagery. The second area would have been the family. I call it experienced art in their everyday lives. Most often you have a different visioning of the artist when it came to the oral history that came, the narrative that came from the family. And the third area would have been the art scene, the community, and the institution. How the art scene was an integral factor, maybe colleagues, history, community, and then institutions that did feature the artist's work in terms of exhibition, film, publication, and oral history, which is very important for me. Because in Asian countries or communities, oral history is vital. Most often we are lacking in the publication. That's why very important that the oral knowledge of the history that comes from ground is passed on to the next generation. Now the 4th section for me is intersections of history, local and global. Let me go back in analyzing this mathematical equation, which is a 4 plus 3 equals 1. In art, it is an old nationalist graffiti from the Basque land. 7 provinces in Spain, 3 in France, equals 1. Now why am I sharing this and what's its relevance to this exhibition? Let's go back to the area number 1, which is about the artist and his practice and his work. Remember that his grand prize was about the High Alay. Now, maybe you don't know that High Alay originated in the Basque country of northern Spain. And an attraction for annual festivals using the church walls as their before. That's how they celebrated. It was the fastest recorded sport during that time. So I'm talking about now the area of intersections. Because remember, I started with the artist as an archive, where you can root from, but I started with High Alai, something that came from his grand prize award. And High Alai, of course, moving to the fourth area of discussion, which is intersection of history. In 1904, High Alai was introduced in the United States in the St. Louis Exposition. Ano ba yung nangyari as a intersection in the St. Louis? Anyone? Wala, mahina. Ha? Yes, it was the same time that the Filipinos, 1,100 Filipinos were exhibited in that area. The same 1904. Imagine the intersections of archiving, which is very integral as well in your study of history. Now, there were native 2,000 humans exhibited. The Negritos, the Bagobos, Moros, and the Visayan housing and Filipino minority groups were exhibited during that time, 1904. So why am I telling all of these things? I was also going back to roots. How did High Alai come into place in the Philippines? Right? As a sport, right? So let's move to the third area, which is the art scene and the community institution. We all know that in 1972, I think, Danilo Daliana was awarded 13 Artist Award. So the 4 plus 3 equals 1, an intersection about Sari Dalena, who also won a 13 Artist Award in the year 2000. She was my colleague that time. 13 Artist Award was that Sari won was in the year 2000. So the trivia here, it was initially in 1972, the award was triennial, but they were forcing somehow to comply with a millennial bug, Y2K. So in the year 2000, it went, instead of 3, became 4. And after the 4th year, it turned into a biennial. And going back to High Alai, well, that's why I'm going back to the year of the 2000, because in High Alai, building was also controversially destroyed in the year 2000. It was an Art Deco building, which was very important. But Art Deco was very popular in the 30s, 20s and the 30s, 1920s and the 1930s. And in 2012, another controversial issue happened in the same area of the High Alai area, which is now what we call the Torre de Manila. Imagine the conversation between histories, the space, and how archive can converse not just with local and global. Very interesting now that we have this ability, especially coming from the research that is up in the net, that is open, that we can see a holistic view of how the artist was seeing on the ground, how the artist can be pictured from a global and a local scene. So with that, I'd like to thank you, because she's already saying, time's up. Salamat.
All right, thank you. So like exhibitions, archives do not just appear. The connections that allow narratives to happen, the conversations that Clara was referencing come out of sometimes very mundane, very daily decisions. And we specifically wanted to really give the focus to the research team behind this exhibition, because they were such an intrinsic part of the work. So I would like to introduce them first individually before we hand over to them. The first member of the team is Kiri Dalena, who of course is a daughter of our featured artist, Danila Dalena. She's a visual artist who works with a range of art media, such as film, sculpture, photography, and installation. She's an ongoing show at 1335 Mobini, in case you would like to move over there afterwards. I'm picking and choosing her. And she's also a recipient of the Cultural Center of the Philippines 13 Artists in 2012. The second member of the team is James Kevin Jesus, JK. JK has worked, or is still working? Has worked for Librarianihan, Inc. as a project associate for different projects involving managing collections and setting up databases for different organizations. He took up library and information science at UP Diliman. And the third member of the team is Clara Carrera, who studied na ba? Oh, congratulations. BFA Studio Arts, major in painting at the UP Diliman, and she works and lives in Quezon City. Well, they all lived in Kiri's studio actually, mainly during the work time. And the fourth member of the team is Bea Mariano. As an independent researcher, occasionally she helps catalog works for an art book and assists in other publications. She's also involved in community and issue-based art projects and exhibits. And she also took up art studies in UP Diliman. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Kiri, who's going to introduce the process.
Magandang hapon. Salamat sa pagpunta sa aming roundtable discussion. As part of the research team, I'm going to introduce our process, but siguro yung flow will be the introduction, and then next will be about the initial research, which was just between me and my father. And then the third is when the team was started to gather and we began building the archive. And then the next would be Bea Clara will talk about the contents of the database or the archive, and the last part we'll talk about the issues, constraints, and problems which we encountered in the process. So for the introduction, I'm the youngest daughter of Danila Dalena, the exhibiting artist, and we received an invitation from the Cultural Center of the Philippines in 2015 to have a retrospective of my father, who is now 75 years old. And at that time, Rica Estrada sent us a letter, and I told my father about it, and we inquired somewhere about what was, they sent us a contract, and at that time, the decision of my father was to decline the invitation, more because even if CCP was going to support it, the support was, there were a lot of requirements from the part of the artist, financial requirements, which my father felt we could not give. But come December of 2015, my father fell sick and had to undergo a surgery. And after that, he changed his mind about accepting the invitation to take on the daunting task of organizing a retrospective within a year. So commitments were made from the part of our family. I was the one who was tasked to, when I eventually ended up taking on the role as because my father was already weak and couldn't really attend to these, so I took on the role of building the team with close coordination with my father. And then also asking specifically, I wrote to the King Kong art projects, particularly to individuals like Gail Vicente, who gave us a brief background about what they prepared for, what they did in preparation for the Chabet series of exhibitions. But she told us that it took them, they had 3 years to work on the research and the archive, and were also able to gather grants and fundraise also from artists to put up money for the exhibitions. So from the beginning, we were aware of these constraints. And my father was very allergic to the term archive. In fact, the moment I say archive or research, he was very vehement in saying that it shouldn't be anything near what Ringo and the rest of King Kong did for Chabet, because we are not capable of that. We don't have the resources. We don't have time to find resources. And we are also very much aware of the limits of the CCP. So we started with, and also the challenge of working with my father, who is a very private person and wouldn't just work with other people. So it started with just me and my father discussing, finding out what works he remembers. We divided an artist collection and then works which are in the private collections as well as institutional collections. And then early works, maybe go up. I asked my father about clippings or other, to look into old clippings or articles written about his work. So I gave him time to retrieve these from his old bauls. So I found out that in the 60s and 70s, he compiled clippings of his works from magazines, newspapers, and we started from there. So I scanned these magazines from the 60s, 70s to the 80s and made a list using Word file, separated, did categories, early works, portraits, and tried to make it chronological. But by May 2016, I already raised the issue to my father about how it was impossible. Even if I was the most beautiful person in the world, I wouldn't be able to undertake research on my own and in time for this retrospective. So I said that I will ask, first we did the decision about inviting the curators. So we invited Chits Ramirez and Eileen Legaspi Ramirez, who very gracefully accepted the invitation. And then for the research, my father did agree that we invite other people to join in the research for as long as he gets along with them. And even relatives were not spared from scrutiny. Like, we were thinking of inviting people who we feel would support the work, given that the financial, it's close to nothing. So what happened was, Bea was recommended, was a former student of Eileen Legaspi Ramirez, and she gave me contact numbers, and I wrote to Bea, and she accepted. Clara, I met through another artist, Alden Santiago, during a random visit to Green Papaya, which was just near our house. And she overheard me speaking to Alden about the difficulty of their preparations and how I would be very grateful if I would have help in documentation. So she wrote to me, and there we formed the group. So they came in July of 2016, and then we started we worked with the Word files at that time. But at the same time, I was already reaching out to Bono Olgado. Bono Olgado is an archivist and is currently the college secretary of the College of Library Science in UP Diliman. And we met, and he said that he will support the research and help us create the database specifically for this. He said that it's not impossible to do it using Word, but there are improvements in applications and programs. So he introduced us to FileMaker. And then came JK. So JK is sort of a prodigy, right? Oh, no, I mean a protege of Bono. And he worked with us. He worked with us directly in developing the database. So now Bea showed some photographs. So the beginning, so these are the initial, go up, initial notes. So these are from the files, 70s, 60s, and then this is 90s already, and then down. Okay, these are from, we also asked CCP to look into their library and archive, and they sent us scans of these files. So we also gathered data from CCP library. Okay, down. And then down. Next slide. Okay, so more. And then these are all existing 35mm slides, which my father kept. They were taken during his survey of works in 1990. And next slide, please. Okay, this was our initial research where we felt that my father came up with a list of names that he remembers have his works, and we felt that it would be easy to access the works if he would help us initially, like speak directly to the private collectors. But their problem was his number. We had to still search for the contacts eventually because his contacts are from the 1990s. Yeah, so there. Now okay, this is our first meeting with the curators, Eileen and Chitz Ramirez. Okay, this is where Bea and Clara comes in. So we were able to borrow a desktop computer, which was dedicated to the research. But Bea and Clara also used their own computers for the research. And we had contributions like some artists like Jet Escueta lent scanners, so it was more of a tulungan. Okay, so these are the notes. My father doesn't like to use the computer, so we would print out the images scanned and then transferred, printed on paper, and then one by one he would go through the pages and I would write down notes, and if he remembers where they are, I would write them down. So there, for example, he suddenly, these are images from 1972, his third one-man show at La Solidaridad Galleries. So we were able to find out that some editorial cartoons were burned down by the military when they also burned down Manuel and Quezon University. And then identified some works which we never recovered. Okay.
So I'll talk about the FileMaker database that we used for the archive. So first of all, I'll just explain briefly what FileMaker is. So FileMaker is a software. It's based on, it's under Apple, I think, but they also have it on Windows. So it's a software. It's called a RAD software, a Rapid Application Development Software. So it's a software that you can use to quickly make an application. So in this case, a database. So with FileMaker, you can make a database, and then you can also make the interface in which to access the database. So, for example, I think this is the first version of the database that was developed for the perspective. So, so here you see the fields. These are all made from the initial meeting. So we Sir Bono and I had meetings with the team, and we discussed what fields are important to be included in the database. And then after the first meeting, we developed a prototype. So this is the first version, and then that's usually how it works. So we develop a prototype, and then we give it to the users. So in this case, the research team, and then they use the prototype and they use it for the actual research, and then after that we get feedback on changes that needs to be made or what improvements could be added. So next, so here you see this is still the first version. But this is what we call the list view. So the previous image was a view where you can see the details of our work, and this is a view where you can see all the works in the list view with just the important details. So like the name, the ID, the type, or the size of the year. And so after many trials, we revised the database. That's the advantage of FileMaker. So you have a database, and then you can change around the interface, but the data stays intact. So this is the second version, I think, where we added contacts database, still in the same file. So after that, we made another revision. This is the final version, I think. So yeah, you can see all the fields that you can put inside the database. This is all developed by the developer, so it's not static like all databases need to have these fields. It all depends on the users, or in this case, the artist, in which what fields he prefers. So next. So ito. This is what the database looks behind the interface. So it's like an Excel sheet. So basically, FileMaker, you have different Excel sheets representing your records, your works, and the data about the works, and then you just make an interface where the research team or the users can more easily populate the fields, and then you can also retrieve the data more easily if you have the interface to show your field. This is the table of the works, the example, and then the next. Okay, this is the example table of the contacts. We just have the names.
So, one of the advantages of FileMaker is that you can easily summarize the whole data for them to easily see the whole body of works. So there are different views. One of these is a bar chart where you can see the classification count of Danilo Danella's body of works. Next. So this is another example of a summary, which is the series count in FileMaker. There you could see Danilo Danielas, Toilet Series, Tatanda Ka Rin Series, which can be analyzed easily. So this is the range of our research. One of the earliest works that we saw was his student plate number 1. It was from a drawing class under Diosdado Lorenzo, one of the 13 modernists. It was dated 1961. And the latest artwork is a painting titled, which is an oil painting. It was in a private collection. So the database's total is around 1,000, almost 1,300 works. And the selected works for the exhibition is around 484. But that's the official number of the database. So when the last copy ended in November, end of November, and then during the installation, some works were added. Many works. So I think the data gathering for Sir Danny's works is really a long-term process. One of the things we realized is that the archive is really doesn't have to stop in the exhibition itself. So it's more long-term. It's a long. This image is a clipping from the Horse Historian where Sir Danny was art editor. He was a staff member there. But before I go there, going back to his early works, here, the one on the left, it was from 1961 and the one on the right is from 2016. So our research spanned 55 years. So if you were able to go around the exhibit areas, the galleries, and found it overwhelming, the archive is more overwhelming. Because we had a lot of things that we weren't able to include because our objective then, when we created the archive, was to aid into curation. So we had certain, or we had to we had deliverables every month, and we would make these books for the artists, for the curators, and yes, for Sir Dan also. So they could try and select, so they could select what they wanted to be included in the exhibit, and then okay, going back to the interesting things we found during our research. Here is one. Again, he was a member of the Varsitarian. This is the first, I guess, printed. It's the first printed where his name appears as an alternate art editor first. He later became art editor. And among his contemporaries were some names you'd see. Francis Dutton, Jane Canton, Hidalgo, etc. So that was Rio. Cirilo Bautista. Sorry. So that's interesting to know. Here, this is not the first. This is not his first cover of that he made on the first act. This isn't his earliest cover for the Varsitarian. There's an earlier one. But this is the Lady of Lullaby. Sorry for your summary. This is the first one, I think. Tumumba sa bahay. This is the third story. You can actually see this painting in the main gallery. And this is a scan from the issue of the Varsitarian itself. Here are some not so well-known works. Not at all, I think. This shows his funny side and his more comical side. So he drew a lot of illustrations for the Varsitarian. If you look here, it says Faceless Black Coffee. And here, Danny was here last today. Interesting trivia, since if you're the first student played that we showed earlier, his professor then was Dado Lorenzo, and he would Lorenzo would ask him to draw in behalf of him in class. So I guess maybe, I don't know, maybe he was close with his professor. And here are other. This is the staff of the Varsitarian. It says here, if you can read it, how to date girls.
Sorry, could I intervene and ask you to perhaps skip to the maybe issues and learnings? Although this is all very compelling information first, but maybe we can come back to it after the rest of the presentation.
Okay, maraming salamat, Bea, Karen, JK. So, key issues, constraints, and problems. So, we're trying to be to always remember that the research is independent of the exhibition. So we'll just try to talk about first the works that were not included in the archive. So, given that the more pressing event is the retrospective, we really had to prioritize. That's why there were some works which were not included, including first publications. From the publications, we had access to the Free Press magazine files. We were able to talk to the son of Teddy Boy Locsin Sr., the junior. So my father only has a few existing works of his illustrations for that. So a lot are lost in the magazines. Also, we found out in the research that he also drew for the Chinese commercial news of the Yu Yitung brothers, the journalists who were attacked by the Marcos dictatorship. They were deported by the Marcoses. So he drew for the Chinese commercial news, and in fact became very good friends with the family that they gave him the blowtorch that he used to create the plastic sculpture series. And then we were able to identify the lost works, meaning lost works which are documented in clippings like installations called Dimagsik and Bangon, just in 1972, and paintings from the Alabang series, more sculptures that dealt with the brutality of the Marcos regime, but we didn't put it into the archive. There should be a way to still record these lost works, even if they're lost. Okay, and then book illustrations, we weren't able to include them. Okay, I pass on the Varsitarian part. Ano? I don't think. Sige. Okay. Varsitarian would have been a good, because these are the earliest works. His earliest works, we don't have works when he was in high school or elementary because his house burned down in the 1970s. And that's why the earliest works that we have are from 1961 from private collector, and 1962, which we found in a house of a relative, another plate, student plate. And then Varsitarian, they only showed us scans. They gave us access to their database, but they were not able to give us access to the original publications. So what we have are scans, black and white scans. So these are places that we can still explore and would like to include. Also not included in the archive are correspondences, posters, brochures, invitations, photographs, sketches, which we feel are important in, or even interviews, films, which we feel are important in creating or giving us an understanding of the milieu that the artist worked with, the kind of environment in the 70s and 60s. So we hope that there is a chance for that in the future. Okay, second part about key issues are the works and materials that were not included in the exhibit. These are more of observations from the part of the research team. So there were, for the political or editorial cartoons, there's a huge number of political and editorial cartoons which are in the collection of Danilo de Lena, but because of constraints, we were only able to show nine political cartoons. Second, there were works that we located but are inaccessible. First, because they're outside of the Philippines. We located important works in Singapore, USA, and Australia. But from the very beginning, we were aware that the CCP would not be able to support the shipping and insurance of these works. So we took it out of the equation, and also, there. So we just identified some works like Alibambang sculptures, Alay para kay Santa Brigida, a work which we thought was lost, but after the exhibition, we discovered that it was in Australia with Alfredo Roses. Okay, show the photo. So Alay, so maybe we'd like to show this work. Okay. Okay, here. So this work, so my father has forgotten about this work, but we found this clipping from a newspaper, and it's titled Alay kay Santa Brigida. It's about a student activist who was truncheon to death by the Philippine Constabulary during Marcos, and my father created this sculpture as an offering to his memory. So we found out that it was in Australia through Facebook. Okay, so another work which perhaps you should see is plastic cover and plastic cover. Okay, there were works which we saw are very, even if we're not trained parang sa conservation and preservation, you could really tell that they're so damaged and fragile. So we didn't include them in the retrospective. But these are like very precious paintings to my father, and he said that if there was a chance to conserve or restore these works, if you would choose the top two, it would be Plastic Cover and Simbahan. We showed Simbahan, but it's the second version that he did in the 90s, I think. But the first one from 1970, 4. It's damaged also, more because of sun exposure. Okay, another work which we were able to, in a way, locate but is inaccessible, even if it's in the country, is Tres Seis Tejado from 1974. So Tres Seis Tejado, I think, was his first. He started to paint more deliberately and regularly after he lost his job in 1972 as an illustrator. So he had time. He had time to paint. So in 1974, he made this painting, and he also turned to gambling. So Tres Seis Tejado is a work showing the High Alay, and it is important to him because at the time when he was very tempted to accept, he had no money, he had children, and he had a friend who was working for the Malacanang, and this friend was already saying, Danny, you don't have money to feed your children. There's a job opening in Malacanang. Please accept it. So he said that he was already breaking and bending to, doing this compromise of working for Malacanang, even if it was very painful. But then, on that same day, he found out that he won a competition in Tres Seis Tejado. So he felt that the painting saved him from selling his soul. So Tres Seis Tejado was, it's a competition, it's a purchase. Huh? Should I delve into it?
We can do it later.
Okay. Okay, sige. Okay, and then next, so we mentioned, okay, so observations. Okay, there was a deliberate effort to prioritize borrowing works that are already in the private collection and in the collection of institutions. My understanding of this is because it would be difficult to access and gather these works outside of the context of a retrospective. So we felt that this was an opportunity to knock on the gates and doors of private collectors and institutions, something that we wouldn't be able to do so outside of the context of a retrospective. My father also said that, we had enough works in our family's collection to fill the CCP, but we felt that these are always there and we can always share it to the public. But these works which are behind gated walls and gated subdivisions, this was a chance to bring them together. And so while they're here, we're working on documenting them before returning them. So there. It's not that we didn't like to show more artist collection works, but it was, I think, this reason as well. Installations. The research helped us to guide the curatorial team in recreation. So Danny's Inferno, there's no documentation of this, but through stories of the artist, we were able to recreate a matchstick installation work. And second, no documentation as well, factory zone. Ito yung mga katol outside. And then Playpen, there's a documentation of this. It was a work that he submitted to 13 artists in 1972. So through the research of the CCP, we found a photograph, and then we were able to recreate this as well. White Ant is a book which we also found in the research of the CCP, and for a book exhibition in the 1970s, and we were able to borrow a termite-infested book. Shoe Story, it's also an installation work. These are images of how we found the picture later on, like last night, of the Shoe Story. I think that's the rat. But my father tried to recreate it by tried to draw it for us so that we would have but we also didn't have the budget to do the full installation of the shoes, second-hand black shoes. So we just bought and borrowed whatever number of black shoes we could. Okay. And another thing that we tried to create post-exhibition opening are t-shirts. His Bastos series of t-shirts. Did you bring them? Sige, we'll show them later. Basta he made t-shirts in the 70s that he wore for himself with words, which if you read aloud, we'll show them to you later. And then, okay, last, key issues. Okay. Key issues that we met in the process and are contending with until now. Okay, funding. Also continuing the research. This includes letting my father understand that the research goes beyond the opening of the retrospective. We are all willing to continue doing the research, but we have a lot of constraints about funding or continuing this. And then third, documentation. Documentation is something that's very important. We feel that we were able to gather a lot of the works here, but then not to photograph them properly would be tantamount to, the opportunity is here, but the cost for documentation is also with the artist, so it's something that we also don't have. And my father has said he could not shoulder, so it's something that we're still dealing with as a research team. Storage. Okay, storage. Maybe you can continue, Bea.
Yeah. Let's wrap up with storage.
Storage. I think the family is starting to build, to renovate their house in Kamuning and in Tahil. They plan to make it into a museum. So it's something that's very because when we say storage, we also mean storage for the archive and the storage for the works, physical works themselves. So what we need, we were not so much, we were not very, we would like to, we need help in giving the artist advice as to how to properly store his works. And we also need time to continue the digital archive because we weren't able to. But there are still a lot more to do, but due to these constraints, we cannot.
All right, thank you. Could I just ask for a round of applause for our research team? So we could go on and on with all the battle stories sa totoo lang, but we in the interest of time, we'd like to move on. I'm asked to announce to you that we are that the discussion is being streamed live in CCP, so wave to your fans, everyone, in the CCP YouTube page and the CCP YouTube page. So one of the reasons too that we wanted to do this discussion is to expand the conversation beyond the immediate work and the immediate context of the Lenina retrospective, and that's why we have invited Michelle Wong from the HR Archive to join us today. If anything that you might take away from the previous presentation is that there is no really one way of doing an archive, and I think Michelle will probably speak to that. among other things. Let me just introduce her briefly. Michelle is a researcher at AAA, based in Hong Kong. She leads the archives research projects in the city, including the Hong Kong Art History Research Project, organized in collaboration with the Hong Kong Museum of Art. A long-term endeavor started in 2013 to create a publicly available resource platform to support art historical research on recent art in Hong Kong. Among her recent engagements, we were together for Ambitious Alignments, New Histories of Southeast Asian Art, a research program funded through the Getty Foundation's Connecting Art Histories initiative. And of course, she was also one of the assistant curators of, I'm doing this right, of the Gwangju Biennale. And she will be sharing to us specifically about an AAA project that she was on top of. I'll hand over to you, Michelle.
So I'm wondering if we could switch seats actually, because my slides are, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Eileen, for the introduction, and thank you for having me here, and thank you for being here on a weekday afternoon. It's really amazing to see the work that the research team has done. I'll speak a little on a project that my colleagues and I have been working for the past 4 years. Those of you who know Asia Art Archive would know us, but if you don't know us, we are a nonprofit organization based in Hong Kong, where our mission and mandate is to facilitate research around recent art in Asia. So I'm one of the researchers on the team, and the project that I'll be speaking about is called the Habitrin Archive Project. It's a single artist archive project, and the artist is deceased actually. And so I'll speak a little on how we research and activate with the excessive enthusiasm that when the man himself was alive was very much practicing that. Ha was alive from 1925 to 2009, born in Canton, fled to Hong Kong through Macau. So he started living in Hong Kong around the late 1950s. He was an artist, a self-taught artist, never went to art school, never taught in any art school. So they made a living by actually running a family-style factory of plastic flowers. And so you can kind of see the collage-y elements in his work even from this, using local materials like bamboo and rattan, etc. But he was also a very prolific photographer, where he photographed not only exhibitions, but also his own works. So you see him here. This is him kind of almost, I think he would be in his 70s. And these are some of his works. And kind of later, even into his life, he started practicing in ink as well. But this is actually a photographic print that you are seeing, and one of the works that the Hong Kong Museum of Art collected. And we like to joke that it's collected by the Museum of Art because it looks like ink. The Museum of Art has a very, very good ink collection, so we kind of like to joke around and speculate why it is in the collection. But Ha was most known when he was alive as a ferocious collector of stuff. So this is one of the rooms in his studio. This is another, we call this Zone P, and now I'll tell you why literally it's Zone P, because this is just one of the rooms that we could not enter from the studio. And this was 2012 of the studio apartment that he was living across from. So the family owned the top floor of a walk-up building, so this is 9th floor up, where it was a room dedicated for his archive. And these are materials that he collected from as early as the 50s, and many of them are actually photographs, because he would go around photographing exhibitions. So he was the uncle who would photograph every exhibition that he went to. And as of now, our tally of exhibitions that he documented is over 2,000. And it's not just in Hong Kong, it's sort of wherever he went. And there are magazines that he collected, and I'll speak a little about that later. And there's a 2,500 volume strong for Personal Library, which were not at all just reference books. This we discovered later on. But this is 2012. This space no longer looks like this, because just this summer we relocated the entire archive to a project space that we started operating in September 2016. We started a small-scale pilot project in 2014 after fundraising for a full year to get a small grant to start kind of mapping out what's inside the archive, and these are some of the stuff that we found. This is an exhibition from 1963 in the City Hall of Hong Kong, which was Hong Kong's first exhibition location. And Ha also kept contact sheets. I don't know if you've seen contact sheets. I've never seen a contact sheet until I started working on this project. But these are basically rolls of film developed into showing kind of like smaller pictures to give you an idea of what all was there. And this was the first thing that we scanned as a way of estimating the volume of the archive, and by extension, how much money, how much time, how many people you need to work to what extent of detail. So we scanned over 3,500 of them. If you do the math a little, this is just 17 years, from 1982 to 1997. So that's easily over 100,000 prints. There's no way we're gonna ever scan all of it, and we're not. But then, apart from these prints, what Ha would also do is then to develop these prints and then put them into individual albums. And one album would be one exhibition. So these are also some of what we're interested in as well. And it's almost you're browsing the exhibition by browsing the photographs. But sometimes the family life merges with this archival practice, and you see it in, for example, this box. The text says family daily life photos. And you open the box, you find photographs of exhibition. Ha is right here. This is him. And then you find I find really beautiful shots of exhibitions. And this is Ha and his family. This is Mrs. Ha and 3 of their 4 children. And Ha ended up posing a lot with his own works, and he would photograph a lot of artists with their works as well. This is a shot of one part of the studio, kind of closer to the ceiling, and these are negatives. And you see he had indexed everything. So this would mean the row 101 to 200 in the year 88. Went to China, went to Beijing, etc., etc. And he traveled quite extensively, and in 1997 went to Documenta 10. But he also went to Manila in 1982, and she was showing in Manila in 1982 at the Met. So this is in fact some of the research that the team had been doing last year. You might recognize some faces. There's also bilingual reviews of the show in 1982 in Manila, in both Chinese and English. And we found even over 300 photographs of them installing at the Met. It was kind of chilling out around, and it's a fantastic way of kind of expanding the narratives of what happened at the time. So Ha would also put numbers on each of the photographs that he developed. This one would be the roll number, and this one would be of the year. So we're also discovering this as we research. Some more contact sheets. And we find contact sheets also really fascinating because it's as chronological and as indicical it would get as documentation. But he would still edit them in a way by annotating this. This is, he called this a studio visit to Louis Chan. But you can see this whole row, actually, he was doing much more than just visiting an artist. He was doing a study of a durian fruit, something else, went to another exhibition. And for us, this is a very interesting case when the editorial and the archival push against themselves. He was also rephotographing books, but also collecting a lot of magazines and visual materials that were circulating at the time. This is a leaflet of a riot that happened in Hong Kong in 1967. And then on to more, he was also compiling these binders of just artist portraits. And we were also finding more and more artist portraits of himself as we went through the archive. So there's Picasso, there's Henry Moore, there's Maurras. Until almost the end of his life. But what really surprised us at the time was a discovery of the collage books that we never knew even existed. So the story was we brought another artist to Ha's archive, because this is also part of the research process. We bring in people who are not involved in the project to kind of get their fresh perspective. And this artist came in and drew out one of these reference books and said, guys, but this is actually not a reference book. I mean, it's actually a collage book from which cover to cover Ha had reappropriated. And very often these are interior design books, so as if he hated the spaces and had to rehang everything inside. But this was only kind of one type of the collage books that we found. We found a more recent one from, I think this is a catalog of Sotheby's auction in 2000, and the word says Ink Revelations. And this is the cover. And it might look like Asian ink, but it's actually an oil painting by an Italian artist. So we like to speculate that this is a collage book that recurate or reimagines what the ink tradition is. So we have Miro next to Zhang Datian. This is Ding Yangyong next to Matisse. And of course, Ha put himself into this tradition as well. So we find this very interesting rewriting of history. As part of the pilot project then from 2014 to 2016, what we also wanted to do is to introduce the public to what we're doing. And we did a small scale exhibition at AAA, which kind of introduced the typographies of what the materials are. So what you're looking at right now is actually AA's library. The screen is a video of one of us flipping the collage books. And on the iPad is actually all of the scans of the collage book that we found at the time, and you can just kind of browse through that. And then beyond that was actually vitrines where the actual objects were there. And the pages of the books were flipped once a week by staff who wanted to, who volunteered to kind of put together their own compilation of those pages. So we also reproduced some of the contact sheets, and they were very carefully selected almost to make sure that our audience would find themselves in them, because we know a lot of people pass through, and as a way to kind of get people talking to us, we select some of the contact sheets that have them in there. And more of the new actual materials inside the table vitrine. We just reproduce these contact sheets so people can poke to as much as they want. But this slide shows what I find most interesting and in a way inspiring is how when other people work on archives, they will come up with things that you never imagined. So we were working with a couple of architects to design the exhibition display system for AAA at the time. And we asked them, would you be interested in working on some of these materials? And these architects are also teachers in university. So they decided to work with their students and picked out one box of exhibition documentation. And there was actually enough materials for them to actually reconstruct the entire exhibition in miniature. The building no longer exists. So they went around looking for the footprint for that exhibition. And Ha photographed himself in the show, and the students put him back in as well. It's really lovely. And then what an amazing thing with this archive, which we like to say is driven by curiosity, is that it opens up you to different worlds. And this is then actually some sort of a Quran in Ha Bingchung's studio. And this led us to kind of working with other artists as well to then extend the life of this collection through different ways. And we've worked with Walid Rad, who actually was the artist who discovered the collage books. And he's since developed a new series of work, creating kind of little dioramas of the collage pages into shoeboxes. And this was then on display in our modest library in Hong Kong. This is another work that we made in collaboration with a fictional character. But the project has now since kind of graduated to another phase. And this is around 2015. when the studio's situation really deteriorated. So it was a top floor building that was over 60 years old, and the seating was just not having it. So we were all the time kind of fundraising, trying to get the project going as well. So it was also around that time that we started fundraising and putting together proposals for a much bigger grant so that we could move the archive and process it for a longer time. And we were very fortunate to get a 3-year grant from the Hong Kong Jockey Club, of all places, the biggest charity in Hong Kong, and to then actually rent a temporary project space and to relocate the entire archive. And we did that in July 2016. And we started packing. And we packed for a month. We moved 3 times. So basically the entire AA team mobilized to pack because there was no aircon in the studio. And what happens when you pack in a very cramped space is you literally fill the entire space with boxes and you can't pack anymore. That's what happened, and we did that for 3 times. This is Mrs. Han. And we hired very professional laborers to then transport these boxes manually down to the ground floor. And we filled the truck, and then we transported them to the new space. And of course, when you've packed one layer, you'll find another layer. This is exactly what happened. So it's like, oh, what is this? These are all magazines from the 50s and 60s, which we think have never seen the light of day for maybe 20 years plus. So this is how we left the studio. We didn't pack any art, so this is also quite interesting, is that we were focusing on the documents. Although you can also say the collage books blur the boundary between what is art and what is document. And it's a very interesting space that we inhabit. So this is the new space as we kind of move in. And as we packed, what we did was we had an architectural drawing of the space. And as we packed, we circled which box where the materials came from where the studio was. And we were logging who packed it, which so much is from, and what box number. So we are able to manage quite a large inventory of the boxes, which we are now then selectively going deeper into to going into individual items. But the space that we now work in is also a space for activation, or what we imagine it is also a space for conversation, because the project is so huge that it would be sort of foolish to be work on your own. So what we also do and hope in these 3 years, we only have this space for 3 years, is through these 3 years to engage different stakeholders and different participants and parties who are interested in working on this together. So this is the archivist from M+, with whom we're consulting how to organize the materials. We moved from the pilot project from a team of 1.5 to now a team of 3. And we also have residencies with curators and researchers. And it's the belief that when you have fresh eyes, when you have people who are invested in different projects who look at these materials, you'll discover new things. And this is the most recent example at the Shanghai Biennale, actually. So one of the curatorial collegiate of the Shanghai Biennale was interested in this project. So we gave him the entire hard disk of what we have scanned. And this is what came out of it. This is a rearrangement of some of the contact sheets. We are also doing this with kind of full support from the family, who wanted the collection to be available publicly for use for free. So there was no money involved at all. And so this was just last week when another university class came to have class, and we just pulled out some materials and kind of let them be. And a very lively discussion came about. And they even started kind of matching the prints to the contact sheets to try to figure out what was developed, what was not. But I'll end with this image. This is an image from 1951, probably in Macau, of Ha very consciously posing with a photography magazine in mind. I just wanted to end with this image because I think it's pretty lovely. This is an accident discovery as we were opening one of the boxes.
Thank you. So, before we launch fully into the discussion, I might like to suggest a few things we could take away from the presentations thus far. They both spoken to issues of inclusions and exclusions, what to put into the archive, what to keep out. And a lot of the time that has to do with the archiving logic. Sometimes the logic isn't so clear at the beginning and then it gets some clarity as you proceed in the work. There are a lot of contingencies that come into play as the archive is taking shape and as you are deciding on what to do with the archive. And we've also touched on the issue of how we might extend the life and the work of archiving. And one of the things that particularly Michelle brought up is the idea of annotations and bringing in new, previously uninvolved eyes and bodies into the work so that they might work on the material and bring life into it. So those are just a few points that I've taken away. I'm sure you have a lot more on your mind. I imagine some of you are working on archives yourselves, or perhaps some of you are planning to launch into the work. So we open the floor now to questions. There's a mic at the center. If you're shy and you want to pass a slip of paper up front to ask your question, that's fine. Any first dibs as far as the questions are concerned? Yes, please, Kathy.
Hi, I'm Katya Guerrero, and well, for me personally, I find dealing with primary source materials very interesting, and much more interesting for exploration, and also because it's an open-ended thing versus, for example, books. That's why for me, like an institution like Asia Archive, giving access to those primary materials that are still open to interpretation is really very important. So I think if these materials could be published or made accessible at least to the public, anyone really, researchers, students, everything, it will open up more inquiry, because usually when we read in a book something, let's say written by a historian, everything is already like finalized. So in that way, it's actually for me, much more exciting, the possibilities of digging and inquiring, So also from an artistic perspective, I find it really fascinating.
Do you have a question, or just wanted to share?
Well, I'm just curious how we can somehow replicate this kind of, I know many private families or, individuals have worked on their own archiving projects, but I'm just thinking how this can be somehow standardized, because I think there are standards that should be implemented even if it's like a personal archive. So how can we possibly like the baby steps leading to trying to standardize a process for the local context?
I know AA has kind of begun work with other archives and other institutions to kind of push that agenda. Would you like to speak on that?
Yeah, and there are best practices, but there's no standard. At least personally, I think, because when one pushes the standard, you can compare the standard of the British Library and the standard of what you can do in Pakistan, or in other places, or in Burma, or in Myanmar, where electricity might become a problem. So then I think there are best practices which sort of international institutions can uphold, and then there are, like you said, very specific local contexts that will very much govern what is possible. And I think the flexibility to be able to navigate both and to make a judgment and decide what is best at that time for that project is vital. Yeah, so that isn't exactly an answer to Eileen's question, but it's what my reflection on what you're saying is.
These best practices that you speak of, does the Asia Art Archive give workshops or lectures that can be specific to a country?
We have guidelines, which are also, we try to upload, but even our practices are high enough, but it's by no means as high as institutions such as the British Library or the MoMA. There you can go very technical into, how do you scan, what do you scan, RAW file to file, JPEG. And I think the approach that I'm in favor of is then cater that to what the project scope is, what the project time frame is, because it's always a function of human resources and time, or funding and time. You can have, and the approach you take. So it's always a case-by-case basis, and we follow a certain standard. But then it's by no means to say if that's not upheld, then the project has failed. We don't believe that.
I'm not sure if this will interest you, but one of the sub-agendas of bringing Michelle over from Hong Kong was to jumpstart a process where we might precisely do what Katya was speaking about, get more people interested in the work and also think about sharing what has been done across possibly isolated initiatives, but from which we could learn from. So for instance, since I teach in the Department of Art Studies, one of the things that we were hoping to do was to get students precisely doing what you were showing and happening in that project space that you presently have, where you would bring in classes and have them work semi-structuredly on material. Yeah. Oh, Silvana's there, please.
Okay, my question is, I have been really archiving from 1975, 80, and practically before the intervention of the computer, we were making files, and every artwork that will enter the gallery is documented. Some photo like this many photographs that you see. I was the photographer, I was the recorder, I did all of this job for many years. And, but now, I would like, then the computer came in. We have almost 20,000 artwork recorded in our files. But I would like, of course, my problem is that I am subjected to the professionality of the people that I also bring. Sometimes they put the wrong measurement, our photograph is made by us. Now we are getting better. We've got better scanner, better Photoshop. More than technology. But I would like to become even more professional, because my idea why I started documenting, because I realized that Philippines was not documenting anything. Actually, they were destroying history through their documentation. So I decided that I need to have at least history kept in my gallery, and then later on, maybe at the end of when I finish working as a gallery donating. But more and more, I would like to find out how can I progress. So I would like to find out here in the Philippines, Manila, who can I approach to get, or even to get a student out of, how do you call it, when they start to,
For
internship, yeah, but they are knowledgeable. I don't want students that are just green horns, because I don't want them to ruin. Like, for example, they have a lot of material on Dani, but I was never approached to find out, for example, if I have in my archive Dani material. What I have, a lot of newspaper and magazine I then found, put away. Of course, my idea is to create what I have had time doing, is that to create a pedigree of each painting. Not only archive like they do, but also pedigree. Because this one established really where is the history of this painting, like a CV of the artwork itself. So this is another, different buyer if he goes. We have given away to artists making their book 300, 400, 500 photographs. Of course, it takes us 1 or 2 months to do that. But I think that's one of the things that gallery 2005, maybe schools could help them out to become more professional, and maybe to view if what they're doing is right and to make an audit into it. Like now I saw there is new way of archiving. I made my own computer and the own database in 1995. So if you would like to come to the gallery one day and see how the database, and then you have a new idea or a new program that I saw, we will be very happy to do that. Because the end, what I would like to do is to donate everything I have to a institution, but I have to make sure that this institution is a capable and very responsible institution that really keeps all the work that I've done for 42 years, kept well.
Certainly will do our work in relaying your search for interns. There are a few institutions that are actually represented here who do send out interns. In regard to my program, we're really just beginning to realize that it's not just museums that the interns should be sent to. So in that regard, we could relay that. And there are arts management students here. Perhaps Vinod might take up that offer also.
Yeah, but I need them to know already. I need them experts. I don't want people that I teach to. I need to be taught.
Usually in an intern situation,
It's opposite.
a faculty supervisor will be working with them. So there is that kind of
That's what I
work
because I
relation.
notice many times I teach them more than they teach me. I'm open. I need to know new things, not things that I know already.
Thank you.
Insight on Silvana has been working on an extensive archive. We have been monitoring it. She's one of the leading galleries who has been doing this in the earlier days. Medyo walang iba na gumagawa. A little. Bobby Valenzuela before was moving into also teaching some of the galleries before to be professional in archiving. And may I repeat the 4 areas of the back to square that may help assist this in terms of the young coming into assistance of the archiving. Remember, the first area would have been the artists. There are volunteers that maybe you can go connect to the artist. And the second area would have been the family, which is what Kiri was doing. It's very good to have primary source and to help assist habang buhay pa yung artist.
Particularly the
Annotations, because we have also been part of the Legazpi archiving, and we've been monitoring the even in the authentication of the works is very vital. And the other component would have been the third scene, which be the art scene, which also includes the gallery, the institutions, and the community, which is this part. So as a student or a practitioner, you have to decide whether you're going into the first area, the second area, or the third area, or the fourth, which is the intersection, which is what Michelle is moving into a global and a local intersection. So that expertise from the field will happen in terms of the archiving.
Any other questions? Please just come up to the mic. to wait for me to call me. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mr. Loretta Pilar from the Ortigas Foundation. This is concerning because I'm archiving myself also. This archiving in Singapore, did you ask Hong Kong? Sorry, Hong Kong, did you ask any professional archivist to help you also? Or you are an archivist? And then one more thing is in selecting the works, you know, I told you told that us that there's a lot of magazines there. You know, did you open them and then like why this magazine came to this studio something like that? Did you ask yourself that? Let's take this.
So the first question is on whether or not we work with professional archivists. So we have an advisory team for this particular project, where people are familiar with archives, but actually not necessarily archivists. Because the funny thing with the position AAA occupies is traditional archivists thinks we're not archivists. And I also don't think I'm an archivist. I'm a researcher working on an archive and research processes build archives in some cases. So in a way, just in this work is actually pushing the notion of what is archiving and how does one do that. But we participate in activities in the Hong Kong Archiving Association, and we are regularly in conversation with, say, the University Archives at Hong Kong U, and also with other colleagues in, say, Singapore, and also we follow news from other institutions, say from the Euro-American world as well. So I don't see myself as an archivist at all. I just work with archives, and I think that the goal is to sustainably activate and work with them, and to inspire more people to work together on it, because it's also a fantastic community building project. Because in history and in Hong Kong, we're a place where history is something that's very volatile. And it is at this time that you would like to build a community, especially younger people, that's invested in these processes and ask critical questions as we do it. And the magazines that you were asking, I guess the magazines went into Ha's collection because he was interested. One way we have been kind of trying to make sense of this archive is, what if we imagine the archive and the process of collecting as a way of learning? So he was a self-taught artist. Maybe photography, going to see exhibitions and photographing them and collecting these magazines, collecting the visual materials was a way of learning.
While I'm waiting for the next question, I just wanted to make a pitch for maybe archives that come out of research, the user-initiated archives. Might also be one way of looking at how archives take shape, because in a way the research fields are defined by the ones who is looking. And the reason I bring this up is because I've been doing a bit of work with the Purina Kahlo Ledesma archive, and I realized that it's so much information, but it's really not organized in a way that the user or researcher is able to find things very quickly. So sometimes reversing the process might also bring in another dynamic to the work, which is not to downplay the work of librarians and trained archivists.
In addition to that, if you should know your collection. Very important. What are you doing? What type of works are you engaging with? Because there is also another area which is collection management, and there's something different between archivist and collection management in terms of what are you going to work on, which is very important question. Eileen was focusing on the archives of Politakalaw because we, as we're working on the centennial of Mang Cesar Legazpi, we have some lost in translations of things that happened before, and it was good that the archive was somehow helping us vision or see what the scenario was before. Because again, we weren't born at that time.
So it's archives, speaking to other archives, basically is what he's talking about. Because we're doing the Legazpi one and well, the Calo Ledesma one is already pre-existing. We have room for one last question. If you would like to come up to the mic. Yeah. I think they want you on the mic, sorry, Silvan.
Shouldn't the university bring forward, because when I lectured in UP some time ago, one thing that I realized that the archists are not really taught to document their work. And so we found that it's very, very hard. I made 3 retrospectives. And during the 3 retrospective, and also looking at the retrospective that Metropolitan Museum did, I realized that it was really extremely hard to find out where painting were and the collector of the painting, because many times the artist always give it away or just doesn't bother to, money against the painting. So also today, with the new achievement of computer and photography, I think the artist should have a better way of really recording, and the school should be really there to teach them. And this will give us the story of the people that will come after the next generation, so easier time to find out where they are, because it's very, very hard. Like the artists that I know in my generation, that I started with the Master of Philippine Arts, few of them really kept the name. Mostly they will put the name of commission painting, but there was a time that so if you're looking for your grandfather, maybe you can look inside of my book and my newspaper, maybe you can find things there.
I wholly agree with you in terms of the institution having to adjust to the conditions of the research field. What I think we discovered and we're continuing to discover in our work is that it's not just a matter of the archives being made or begun, because there are also market forces that come into play. Some collectors will not want to reveal works that are with them, or some institutions through which works have passed hands on will be proprietary about the information and will want access to your database to be able to give you the information that you need. So there's all these other contingencies that play into the research, which would require a whole new semester to talk about actually. But and we don't have the time, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to end by saying that perhaps the ultimate goal is to have even just these small initiatives that are already begun and are out there somehow to be networked in a way so that the work can continue and to be able to counterbalance that kind of, the ones who don't want to share the information, so that we can make it flow and extend the life. One last, and then
One last. Because I just wanted for you to know that there are 2 paradigms, 2 schools of thought. As an artist, doesn't really want to archive his works. No, actually, in the 70s, it was very hard to archive because of film. Unlike now, today, not too many have the resource to film or to put in photos there or invest in slides. That's why it's very important that the first archive they do is actually putting their images on canvas. So that's the first archive they do. So whether it's like Goya or the May of Thirds, wherein you have the French coming in, or what Dalena has been doing in his archiving history using the works, that is the primary source for me. And then the secondary would have been how this would be translated and preserved in terms of history and passing on to the generations, which is very important.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe from our end, since we have done the research and continue to do this, the biggest benefit for us is how to make it accessible to the public, but for the right reasons, meaning we wish for more people to be able to access the works and the other materials related to the practice of this particular artist, but so far the interest in the data that we have collected is more in finding out where the works are, so that possibly, it's more for that. Like, we wish to find out, the best practices in sharing data that we have gathered, but at the same time, protecting it in such a way that it's accessed for the right reasons to help students, young people understand this part of art history, and also the times that the artists lived in, his contemporaries, the criticism. But so far, the interest in the data that we have gathered is more about who owns the works, where are they? So, if you get my drift. So, there's something, I understand this, that this is human nature, or market forces at work, but given that we are all very new in this and are quite naive in the workings of so I think advice on how to develop from where we go and how to share it, but at the same time protect it, is what we wish.
Thank you, Kiri. That sounds like a sequel asking to be pursued. Yes, sir. Huli na talaga.
I would answer that, sometimes you acknowledge them on sorry, acknowledging. Kung gusto mo yung iba ayaw nila, but sometimes acknowledging them is helps that it will give you the help that you need. You acknowledge lang yung mga where your sources are.
Thank you po. Meron namang mabubuting nilalang dyan. Hindi lang sila lahat mabubuti. Anyway, so we'd like to remind you that the Dalena retrospective is still ongoing. It will run through March 4. And we have a closing event, which is it's a jam of poets and musicians, which we will still continue to do. March 4 then. Yeah. So please feel free to join us then, and please see the show. Thank you very much for coming today.